Today we're diving into something truly unique. It's a fascinating exploration drawn from this remarkable collection of personal observations and insights, all penned on June 18th across several different years.
Right, June 18th specifically. It's quite a constraint in itself.
Exactly. And this isn't just, reading them in order. It's more of a deep thematic journey connecting ideas about, well, how technology relentlessly evolves and what it really means to be well-informed and maybe authentic in our rapidly shifting world.
That authenticity piece is key, I think.
It really is. Let's unpack this genuinely unique mosaic of insights. So let's kick things off with creativity. We're pulling from an entry dated June 18th, 2018. It lays out basically two primary strategies for making things. One involves imposing clear constraints. Think like a painter limiting themselves to specific colors.
Right, or a musician sticking to a key or meter.
Exactly, key, meter, duration. And the other approach is almost the opposite. Free experimentation, intentionally avoiding any rules. This second way, it's often praised for breaking through creative blocks.
That's right. And while that unbridled freeform creativity is fantastic for, getting the ideas flowing, the inherent challenge is that the work often remains unresolved.
Okay, so it stays kind of loose.
Yeah. To truly bring a piece to completion, to give it that form and finality, you almost always find yourself reintroducing some rules, some structure, some constraints. The effective sweet spot, the real insight here, often lies somewhere on that continuum. It's a dynamic balance, between wild exploration and that disciplined, structured finishing.
That's a powerful idea, that freedom often needs to be reined in to finish something. It makes me wonder if some truly groundbreaking free-form work might never feel finished because it just resists those constraints.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. Maybe its nature is unfinished.
And it's intriguing how these strategies differ in, say, business. Their constraints are often baked in from the get-go, right? Deadlines, budgets, client needs.
Oh, absolutely.
So the creative results really hinge on fostering an ethos of creativity within that already structured team environment.
It's creativity inside the box, but making the box feel bigger somehow.
Yeah, well put. Now, speaking of creation, let's zoom in on something more specific. Music and lyrics.
Yeah.
This idea pops up first on June 18th, 1998, and then it's revisited on June 18th, 2025.
Wow, quite a gap.
Right. The observation is how easily lyrics can go completely unnoticed. They almost become subliminal because the music itself is just so utterly seductive.
The melody or the beat just grabs you.
Totally. Yet that doesn't diminish their underlying importance. And there's also this concept of singability. The lyrics need to feel good to sing, even if their deeper meaning isn't immediately clear.
Or even if there wasn't a profound intended meaning to begin with.
Exactly. You might only truly tune into the lyrics or grasp their full weight years or even decades later.
That's happened to me countless times. You hear a song forever, then one day, bam, the lyric hits you.
Oh, me too. I love the anecdote in the notes about a friend who listened to 10cc's I'm Not in Love for years and never caught that the female voice whispering in the background was saying, "Big boys don't cry." He genuinely thought it was some kind of foreign language.
No way. It really shows how much the music can dominate.
It's a perfect example of meaning hiding in plain sight. Of course, in the post-internet era, it's just a simple click to find all the background you need on lyric meetings or hidden vocal tracks.
Right. The mystery is easier to solve now, for better or worse. What's fascinating here is how the deliberate choices within musical composition, those constraints we just talked about, can both obscure and paradoxically reveal meaning over time.
Okay, how so?
Well, the music's initial allure might draw your attention away from the lyrics. But then as your listening matures, maybe, or with the advent of new tools like the internet, those previously hidden layers of meaning suddenly surface. It's a powerful illustration of the dynamic relationship between creative elements and how our engagement with them evolves through different contexts and over time.
That leads us right into the evolution of technology itself. Let's shift gears a bit and consider a Dynaxiom draft, basically, a set of foundational principles from June 18th, 2021.
Dynaxiom, okay.
This draft states, only certain technologies get chosen for the future. This particular observation came up while reflecting on the metaverse.
Still a hot topic, sort of.
It is. It's often presented as the next great leap, the evolution from TV to social media.
Yeah.
But what's immediately striking is the acknowledgement that it's also, fundamentally, a repackaged version of older virtual worlds, like Second Life.
Right. It's not entirely sprung from nowhere. That repackaged idea is important.
Definitely.
And it's a critical insight when we talk about what makes a technology get chosen. Often it's not just about, inherent superiority or the best design.
So what is it then?
The notes refer to it as a Piquancy moment, or maybe like a feedback loop. Think of guitar feedback, that resonance.
Okay, yeah.
It's a form of collective energy and interaction that makes things dynamic and truly gets them going. That resonance creates a kind of social or cultural heat that propels adoption. It can seem almost random which technology society ultimately embraces. But that feedback loop, that moment of widespread cultural resonance is absolutely key.
And we're already seeing concrete examples of the metaverse breaking into, real-world applications. Political campaigns are using it. We've seen figures like AOC and Andrew Yang engaging with voters there.
Going where the people are, or where they might be going.
It really underscores that idea. And for music, there are distinct possibilities, especially with immersive audio. As a musician who spends a lot of time mixing under headphones, thinking out where sounds are placed in their context.
Yeah, the spatial aspect.
The metaverse offers exciting new avenues. There's this hope, maybe, that the metaverse will somehow separate itself from social media.
The constant stream.
But the notes also acknowledge that social media never truly separated from TV. It makes you wonder if, in the end, everything just becomes commingled, like digital soup.
It does seem to head that way, doesn't it? It's a curious phenomenon, too. Talking about past technologies as definitively past almost seems to make new things feel more new than they actually are.
That's a great point. It creates artificial novelty.
Yeah. And when we connect this to the bigger picture, the concerns about the metaverse from that 2021 entry really echo the dot-com boom. The underlying idea is that media forms don't truly die, they simply survive however they can. They evolve in weird ways, becoming what the notes describe as mutants.
Mutants, I like that.
It highlights the importance of intentional direction, though. There's a clear call in there to watch this thing and keep it on a leash to prevent the metaverse from going off the rails.
That idea of technologies evolving, even mutating, leads perfectly into the June 18th, 2022 entry on image-based culture. It paints a stark contrast with Web 1.0, say around the year 2000. Back then, people were far more inclined to write. We had these rich, excursive discussions over email or bulletin boards.
Oh, yeah, I remember those long threads. Images back then were cumbersome, right? Dial-up connections made them a real pain.
Now, even text itself is becoming optimized for the web, almost a form of exformation, information that's been stripped down, leaving only the bare essentials.
Exformation, interesting term.
The vivid example given is Victor Hugo's famous inquiry to his publisher about how Les Miserables was selling. He just said a single question mark, and the publisher replied with an exclamation mark.
That is basically emoji. Centuries ahead of his time.
Almost makes you wonder if he had a tiny smartphone screen in mind back then.
What's ironic now is that we're seeing content being explicitly serialized for binge consumption. It's something the notes express clear reservations about.
Right, the endless series.
It really makes you wonder, why does an idea need to be stretched out to 8 hours when it could have been presented in just 80 minutes?
Good question. Padding. Or something else.
It's not a new phenomenon either. Man Ray actually discussed this very tendency, this sort of inflation of content, in his essays way back in the late 1920s.
No kidding, Man Ray.
Yeah, nearly 100 years ago.
And communication with images inherently discourages elaboration, doesn't it? The unspoken assumption is that everyone is perpetually busy, constantly engaged with microstimulation.
Right. Got to keep scrolling.
And emoji are a perfect manifestation of that. The web has truly discouraged long-form content over time, and it's had the same effect on communication itself. Extended silences or long periods between communications are now, as the notes say, fraught with invisible emoji.
Implying meaning where none might be intended. That's tricky. Man Ray had that insight nearly a century ago that still rings true. Technology often tends to give us more and more options, and then paradoxically, we scale back when we realize we don't need quite so much.
We simplify.
We simplify. But the key point is, If communication becomes just question mark and exclamation mark all the time, if we're constantly simplifying, then at some point, expansion and elaboration become absolutely necessary again.
To add nuance back in.
Exactly. It creates this fascinating push-pull. This really highlights a deeper tension. The constant push from technology to give us more versus our innate human tendency to simplify, leading to this cyclical need for expansion.
And that idea of binging. It's almost our solution to content we view as infinite, but then boredom becomes a factor because it starts to resemble the unedited, often mundane pace of real life.
Right. The endless scroll becomes just endless.
Perhaps emojification itself is a form of film editing.
Yeah.
You're cutting to form a narrative, but sometimes you're cutting too much or maybe too little, and it shapes the story in unintended ways.
That's a good analogy. And linking back, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that tension between the technological push and the human tendency for simplification. It loops back to needing to watch this thing and keep it on a leash. Remember that from 2021 regarding the metaverse.
Right, the need for intentional direction.
Yeah, to prevent it just going off the rails into pure simplification, or conversely, unmanageable complexity.
Let's turn now to some more personal, sort of introspective reflections. These are from June 18th, 2023. The notes describe this Sunday morning struggle between a massive backlog of reading, academic papers, research, books, and the irresistible pull of working on music.
The creative urge versus the intellectual task list. I know that feeling.
Me too. The powerful insight here is that music is where one feels most myself, even if it seems inconsistent with being an intellectual or a technology writer.
It's a profound point about identity and coherence. Playing music is described in the notes as, well, left-brained for the skill acquisition, the technical maintenance, the practice.
For bloodshedding.
Exactly. But then very right-brained for the actual performance, the intuitive flow. Different arrangements, different players, even different instruments, they lead to different approaches.
Okay.
And that really highlights how different facets of everyone's personality can feel inconsistent. The bass player persona versus the songwriter or the nonfiction technology writer. It aligns beautifully with insights from thinkers like Ian McGilchrist, who explores how our brain hemispheres approach the world differently.
Right, the master and his emissary.
Precisely. How they influence perception, creativity, and how integrating them is key to a holistic self.
It's true, we all have these different modes. And then there's the internet's undeniable influence on debate. Roger Daltrey's hatred of the internet is explicitly mentioned, and how it has made us more inclined to debate with everyone wanting to be a pundit. It's true, everyone has a platform now.
Everyone's got a microphone.
But it begs the question, does that increased inclination to debate actually translate to better or more constructive discourse, or just more noise?
That's the crucial distinction, isn't it? The internet presents this fascinating paradox noted in that 2023 entry. It makes us at once more and less intellectual.
More and less. How?
More in terms of having readily available language for articulating ideas, an endless supply of information, examples.
But you can look anything up instantly.
But less, perhaps, in terms of seeking celebrity for intellect, unlike, say, the influential columnists around 2000. Before the internet, written work was typically vetted through established publishers. That implicitly meant people probably did less writing overall, but what was published often had a higher bar.
A filtering mechanism.
Yeah. Compare that to earlier practices like writing longhand or dictation for extensive correspondences. The medium really does shape the message and our willingness to engage deeply with it.
And then there's a universal pattern, too, which these notes touch on. Older generations always seem to struggle with adapting to new technologies. It feels inevitable.
Always has, probably always will.
The prediction is that social media natives, the digital natives of today, will face the exact same challenge in 2050. It's almost a cycle.
Their kids will invent something baffling.
Totally. Our consciousness adapts for survival, and we have this recurring human tendency to think in seasons or ages. Remember the Y2K, brand new day optimism?
Oh, I remember the panic more. But yes, the optimism too.
And now we see similar beliefs about a new age, or conversely, a dark age. It's like we constantly need a narrative arc for our collective journey.
We need stories to make sense of it all. The skepticism from that 2023 entry is particularly notable, though. It states flatly, collective decisions are never reliable. It questions the boundless faith someplace in the internet, noting its surprisingly limited impact on truly pressing global issues like, say, CO2 levels.
Yeah, has it really solved the big stuff?
It even directly references the silicon snake oil skepticism towards the internet back in 1995. A timely reminder that technology is not, and has never been, a panacea for all human problems.
Silicon snake oil. Wow, that takes me back. And that skepticism brings us directly to the AI hype, discussed in 2023 and revisited in 2025. Initially, there was clear skepticism. The author notes they used it and went back to manual work. Felt it wasn't quite there yet.
Been there.
But by 2025, the perspective shifted significantly, acknowledging large language models, LLMs, as very useful for text and audio-visual tasks. But here's the critical insight, the major distinction these notes make.
Okay.
AI hasn't replaced organic creativity where you actually feel like you've done something rather than just produce something.
That's huge. The feeling of creation.
It highlights the profound difference between efficient generation and the unique human experience of feeling you've truly done something. A distinction crucial, I think, for artists and creators grappling with AI now.
That distinction between doing and producing is absolutely key. The notes also delve into achieving coherence and fluency in one's life. It references Eckhart Tolle's idea of people being on different levels or floors of presence and understanding.
Different levels, okay.
The challenge, then, lies in communication between these different levels, and the desire for an elevator, metaphorically speaking, for greater ease or presence, both interpersonally and intrapersonal.
Intrapersonal, like within yourself.
Exactly. Think about doing deeply technical work in the morning, very left brain, and then seamlessly shifting to intuitive music creation in the afternoon, very right brain. Those can feel like two very different floors of your personality. Achieving fluency between them is a constant process.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
The ideal, then, is described as a union of the opposites for what the notes call integrity.
Integrity as wholeness.
Yes. Authenticity is described as having fluency between these different, often seemingly contradictory parts of yourself, actively avoiding fragmentation. It strongly stresses the importance of not making apologies for one's core values or, going along to get along phonally.
Because that won't build authentic, lasting relationships.
Right.
Or a coherent self.
Exactly. Finally, bringing in the AI perspective from June 18th, 2024, it circles back to agency, how one situates yourself when you're making something with AI, and the deeply personal choice sometimes not to use the internet or AI for what one truly wants to do organically.
That choice is vital. This raises an important question about our agency and where authenticity truly resides in this rapidly evolving ecosystem. The vision for a custom AI tool from that 2024 entry is incredibly specific.
How so?
It's about selecting words from specific texts, not the entire scraped internet, crucially, and then mapping them precisely to a rhythm. Then choosing a good key, maybe including horn keys or specific jazz R&B templates that suggest a certain swing feel.
Getting very granular.
Very. And the critical questions immediately arise. Does AI truly grasp the complex rhythmic feel of 128 time, which is common in jazz and R&B, or the nuanced swing that defines so much of that music?
Can it really feel the groove?
Exactly. Does AI do swing well? The desire is for minimal tweaking, because if it requires extensive manual editing afterwards, well, then manual methods are just preferred.
It has to actually save time or offer something unique, not just create more work.
Precisely. It's a very practical, hands-on view of AI's current creative limitations, at least from this perspective.
So we've journeyed through, the intricacies of creativity, explored the rapid evolution of technology from Web 1.0 right up to the metaverse and AI, and really delved into this profound human quest for authenticity and coherence in a world of constant change and, frankly, information overload.
It's quite a tapestry woven from just one date across the years.
It really is. It's clear these notes, despite being personal observations,